Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe Mikanovsky, product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back. Today we're kicking off a series on startups. We're happy to have the founder of Avrio, Andrew Michael, on the show to talk about the product. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm good, thanks, Matt.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Moshe. It's great to be here.
Great. So, tell us about yourself and about Avrio. What is it? What's the product it's all about?
So, as Matt mentioned, I'm the founder of Avrio. And essentially what we're building is a platform that enables growing teams to centralize customer insights. And we do that in a couple of different ways. So the first way is we have a browser extension that essentially works across your entire tool stack. So you can quickly and easily gather information and insights from your different tools, bringing in qualitative and quantitative sources. An example might be for a product manager looking at a product analytics platform like Mixpanel. You discover something interesting. You can quickly easily save that and share it with your team immediately from where you are. And then we, on the other side, on the qualitative side, we allow you to upload all your user interviews and your recordings from there, have them automatically transcribed, and then create short clips by just copy and pasting transcripts to then bring together the what's and the why. And essentially, this is a big problem like we see and we believe that companies make today is that most companies have user research and UX sitting on one side of the organization and then data analytics and BI sitting on the other. And they very rarely do they work together. So essentially what Avrio is doing is bringing together a research platform that allows product teams to research effectively together, bringing together the qualitative and quantitative insights to tell the full picture.
Yeah, I think we touched on it in a few of the products that we talked about in the past and some of the episodes about how people actually share those insights. So this is really what Avrio is there to solve?
Yes, exactly. It's messy. And this is actually like coming from my own experience at HotJar, analytics and feedback. And there I was the head of business intelligence and we grew really, really fast. So I joined the company when it was about 20 something employees and I left when there was about 120. And somewhere around like the 80 employee mark is where this really started to become a problem. And we started to see like user research being conducted in silos, good insights were going to waste, work was being repeated. And I just sort of said, okay, like we got to find a better way. So I really tried to see what others were doing. And it was very common. They would just say like, oh, we use Notion, we use Confluence, we use Airtable, but they all had the same problems. And that's where we decided to scratch my own itch and start Avrio.
Nice. Yeah, HotJar is one of those products we still have to do an episode about in the future. So, by the way, are you using it these days or not?
Myself, HotJar?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Oh, so maybe we'll have you maybe as a guest to talk about that in the future when we do the episode about that.
Nice. Yeah, no, HotJar is a fantastic product.
And you also have the insights from actually being there from almost the beginning, as it sounds.
Yeah, I was there in the early days.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So that's really interesting how you came by the problem and then how you decided to actually do something about it. And that's what is exciting for us to hear from founders of startups. Again, thank you for sharing that with us.
It's a pleasure.
I was checking out the website and I really like some of the features it has. I particularly like the embedded feature where if you're working on something in general, where Avrio is sitting there and allows you to really interact with it regardless of where you are, what tool you're in. Because I find that in some of the work I do is you have to bounce around to different places in order to like save your work and to save your notes and stuff. I thought the embedded feature was pretty cool.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, this is one of those things as well. We saw from our own experience. And like you said, like having to context switch, having to switch between different apps, it gets overly complex and hard to find the information that you need. So with embeds, actually what you can do is you can pretty much embed an Avrio link anywhere. And with the extension installed, it opens up that information wherever you are. So like a few good use cases on the product side is we see teams like saving Avrio insights or cards directly in Jira tickets. And then that gives the engineers context without having to leave Jira. They can have that information directly in context for them there. Product designers can add them in like Figma files and so forth. So it really allows you to bring your data, bring your insights wherever you're working and give access to your team. And your team that doesn't necessarily need to have access to every single tool in your stack either, then that way too.
Does Avrio does it integrate with a number of tools? I saw an option to integrate. So I'm really interested in the integration features.
Yeah. So Avrio, basically we integrate one with Zapier. So with Zapier, that unlocks about 1,000 plus different integrations on its own. We are going to start introducing more native integrations for Avrio that we're seeing now. The idea we chose Zapier to begin with was really to sort of see, okay, what were some of the most common use cases, most common integrations people were enabling, and then from there be able to sort of prioritize the roadmap as a form. We also obviously have the Chrome extension, which pretty much works everywhere. So naturally, it integrates directly in a lot of different products. And we customize quite a few different products for Avrio. So if you open up a Google Doc and you have the extension installed, you see a few different Avrio interactions, the Google Suite, and likewise with a few other analytics products. We also then have Slack integration, which essentially what that allows you to do is automatically post new updates to your team in Slack. But also a lot of times, like interesting insights, interesting information is shared within Slack, and you can immediately save any thread to Avrio and create a card with it, so your team can later have access to it, and you don't lose that message and the myriad of information that's flowing in and out of Slack on a daily basis.
Yeah, these days integrations is really an important thing because we work in so many applications, and having just another one and another one and another one, and if they're not integrated, it's just doesn't work usually. And also from being on the selecting side of products, when I select a new product, I look sometimes to see what type of integrations they have, and that also shows about how forward thinking you are, and that you're actually not just thinking about your own product but also about the ecosystem and how users are going to use that.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal scenario is that people don't know Avrio really exists. And it's just a layer that sits on top of everything and allows information to flow in and out. And we sort of gave the analogy in the beginning of what segment does for structured data. It's essentially what we want to try and do with the unstructured insights and the opinions that get derived from the data. So that means like information needs to be able to flow freely across your entire stack, and people need to be able to access it. We just give them a good structure in order to do so.
So let's talk a bit about the users and the personas for that. Is it mainly product managers, or it's also other type of users?
Yeah, so we focus ourselves on product teams. And when we say product teams, it's product manager, product designer, UX user researcher, and a data analyst specifically. So there's slightly different use cases for each, but overall, like they have the same common use case, which is really around like product discovery and user research, trying to understand what to build next, where opportunities lie, right. And then they work and use the tool in tandem.
Right. So the product team in general.
Yes.
What about stakeholders? If they want to share insights with stakeholders specifically to, I don't know, KPIs or other things?
Yep. So absolutely, stakeholders are a factor, but they would be the consumers of the system, where we sort of see our focus really on servicing the day-to-day users of the product, the ones that are going to be getting the maximum benefit from it. And then our second sort of focus, once we feel we at a reasonable status of satisfying the jobs to be done of our main core audience, we'll then switch a little bit of focusing towards the presentation layer, which is also going to be equally as important, but it's something that hasn't been given as much attention as we would like to at this point.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you started first with the people that are actually creating those insights and sharing those insights.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Which is mostly our audience, so that's very cool.
Yeah.
Can you share with us who is already using it?
Yeah, so we launched the product at the end of September last year. So we're still very, very early in our sort of product discovery phase. We had about 500-600 companies that have signed up so far. We have companies like Holded, Figma signed up to give us a go. A lot of people just sort of experimenting and testing out the platform at this time, but we've been fortunate to really just be able to learn a ton as well at the same time. So done close to, if not more than 100 user interviews over the last few months as well, really just sort of trying to learn and iterate as much as possible at this point. But we've got some really good companies using the product, and we're looking now to continue the growth.
So it sounds like you're really doing it the right way.
Yes, absolutely.
Which
I
is
mean,
great.
the whole platform is there to help people do their own user research and to bring together insights. And if we're not doing that, it's like, I don't even know what we're doing.
Right. So you're using it yourselves as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's usually something that helps really companies be much more successful.
Yeah, for sure.
Agreed. I noticed on the demo, you have a really nice demo on the site. It referenced possibly, you mentioned Figma, and it almost seemed as though Figma was, maybe your Figma board was embedded in Avrio.
You can do that as well. Yeah.
That's very cool. You mind explaining that a little more?
Yeah. So the nice thing with Avrio, essentially what we have is what we call projects. And within projects, you can house many different artifacts and through embeds. And that can be sort of like a Figma file, it can be data analytics, it can be a HotJar heat map. Like you can pretty much bring together all these different artifacts as you're going through the various project discovery process. So a typical team might want to start out a project and they're trying to maybe, let's say, make improvements to the login process. The team can then collaborate together and they might start out with a few different user interviews to see how things are going at the current point in time. They can upload those interviews, they get transcripts immediately, and then they can pull out interesting parts of it. They can then go into Mixpanel, they can go into Amplitude or Looker, whatever data analytics tool they are, pull in the data so they can start to see, okay, like, is what we're hearing reflective in the data itself? And then from there, like as they're going through different prototype stages and designs, they can house and collect everything in there. So by the time a decision is made and something is shipped to the final product, you have this whole history and lineage of like what decisions were made and why, and what is the supporting evidence to do with. And we just make it really, really easy to bring together all these different sources of data and artifacts. And again, like Figma file being a very, very big, important process of the research process.
I was just wondering about, there are the roadmap systems out there that also have feedback gathering from people and stuff like that. It's more of a qualitative than quantitative usually. I know it's not the same, and I understand it, but how do you see the differences usually and the added value that Avrio is providing?
Yeah, so this is one thing we see a lot as well, and we get often like compared to similar products that just focus on user feedback. One of the key differentiators that we really want to push for is the idea of mixed methods research and bringing together qualitative and quantitative sources. So giving teams the ability to bring these two together, because typically software on the market today either focuses on one or the other. So if it's a feedback tool, it's like purely qualitative data, and then that's where you're getting information from. That is a component of Avrio, and you can do that with Avrio. So you can essentially connect different feedback sources to automatically generate cards and then have the abilities to search and filter and sort through those and tag feedback. But it's not limited to that. So this is the key, I'd say, for us, a differentiator. We really see a big opportunity is, and some of like the more successful companies today are doing this, like Shopify, Spotify, like a few others really understand the importance of combining and having these teams work together and not just focusing on either fully quantitative, but having the ability to have them work side by side and inform one and another.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What type of learning curve does a tool like Avrio have? Seems like a tool you can pretty much hop in and start to get to work pretty quickly in. Yeah,
I'm going to be the worst person to give you an
maybe
answer.
So. Maybe so.
I'm going to be super biased.
That's
super
true.
Easy. No, I think like with any tool, there is a learning curve. And I think for us, though, if you're familiar with sort of tools like Evernote and whatnot, when it comes to note taking, and you've used similar, like maybe browser experiences before, it's super simple to understand and how it works from the experience, from the browser experience and from the extension. And then from a web app, I would say it's like just like any other SaaS app. There's not much to it. You have a navigation, a menu, and you have your information stored. So it's relatively simple, but I think there are new concepts that we do introduce that challenge some of the traditional ways people think about doing things. So anytime you try to do something new, like there's always the risk of that we've gone too far with things and we need to bring things back to keep things simple.
Right. You are changing a workflow. So someone might have traditionally done something pretty much complicated when it comes to saving different items all over these distributed systems. So you are changing the workflow, but being as non-intrusive on that workflow, making it as easy as possible to accommodate that workflow.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things like we saw as well. Before leaving HotJar, like one of the quarters when I was there, we started doing OKR planning. And what I started seeing like the team was doing was, although the company had the same objectives and we just sort of trickled them down into different teams, we had a really great exercise done by the product team, and they went out and did a whole bunch of research and they centralized it inside Confluence. And inside there, though, they had like user quotes, they had snippets from interviews, they had data and analytics graphs showing information to inform decisions. And then from there, they sort of said, okay, these are what our key results are going to be. These are the objectives that we're going after. They're going to influence it. And it was really effective. But a few things were wrong with it. Like one, they had to go to all these different tools, first of all, like take screenshots, take snippets, save things, and things go out of date. So it's impossible to tell. Like you have a screenshot of a graph living inside a Confluence page. It's not very, very helpful for the person coming maybe 2-3 months down the line. Like what filters did you use? What was the metadata behind that graph analytic? And these are some of the things that Avrio helps do and improve for you by automatically saving the source and linking back to the original artifact. And then the other thing was like the business intelligence team that I was leading had done most of that research that the product team had already gone and redone. So because there was no easy way to go and sort of like be able to search and see, okay, what do we really know on topic X already at this point in time? People were just going out and repeating the same work over and over.
Right.
So these are some of the things where we just sort of saw opportunities. Okay, there can be a better way and we can fix it as well. And then the next level where we see like a good opportunity as well for us is showing you the information that you don't know you needed to know. And what I mean by that is you can imagine an example now where your team is using Avrio. People are saving information all over the place. They might be saving things into different projects. And you open up Amplitude, you're looking at your analytics graph. And what we have is something called pins, which essentially pins information to specific URLs where you've either saved information from or you've decided to pin an insight specifically to that page. We end up showing you then some other insights or some other notes that people have made about the specific pages that you're on. So you can learn from others and others' discovery process as you're going as well. So slowly over time, we see this as an opportunity to provide intelligence to you as you're going on your discovery process and saying like, hey, Matt, like we see you currently looking at this Amplitude graph. Somebody's also connected it to a project and a piece of feedback from Zendesk. Maybe this will be interesting to you. And this is where we see like a big opportunity. Like once we start to see big usage within organizations is really being able to uncover and unlock information that typically would have been at the bottom of a spreadsheet or a Google Doc or a Confluence page.
Yeah, because you can make those connections. And is the system is the one that making those connections and suggesting them?
Yes, so we make the connections today. We haven't got to suggesting them just yet, but we do currently store those connections and you can see them through. So when you do visit pages now where information has been saved, there's a little like widget that pops up on the right-hand side to indicate that there's something there that's relevant for you. But yeah, slowly over time, we'll also be starting to make suggestions.
Yeah, which is really powerful. But at the end of the day, it's really all about the adoption and how people are using it and whether they are tagging or sending to Avrio the right information. And sometimes they might send too much or not enough or whatever it is. How do you manage that?
Yeah, so this is something that's in our roadmap. We haven't pushed it yet, but essentially is a couple of controls that we'll be introducing. One is to set a validity period on information saved. So you can decide, okay, this piece of information I'm saving should be in the repository for the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year, or maybe it's evergreen. So that's one way, like we're looking to tackle it by automatically archiving. And the second way is also then to be able to have expert validators. So essentially allowing anybody to create information, but then things that are going to show up in the repository or the team to have access to would need to go through an approval process if you're not part of like the experts that are qualified by your company in exclamation marks.
So they will clean the data a bit more or make sure that things are organized properly.
Yes. And just making sure what gets pushed through to the entire team has some sort of validation behind it. And I think like this is something we also saw in our team in business intelligence and HotJar is that we really wanted to enable anybody to do their own data and analysis and go out and sort of self-serve. but not everyone has the same level of proficiency or the same analytical capabilities. So you can, like, there's a very good saying as well, is if you torture the data long enough, it'll confess to anything.
Yes.
So people could just end up coming to their own conclusions, and sometimes it can be dangerous. So this for us, we saw as like one of the safety features we wanted to bring in to avoid these situations.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that sounds like really good approaches to do that.
Yeah, this is really nice because at the end of the day, it's building a shared understanding. I think a lot of what I've seen in my work experience is like the lack of shared understanding. Even if you come out of meetings where not everyone's on the same page, but I think with something like Avrio, where you have, not only can you share the first level of documentation, but if it's going to lead you in other directions where it's going to add layers of intelligence on what you're learning, I think that's going to make the team in general stronger.
Yeah. And then the data cleanliness is something that you I'm sure you're familiar from data analytics, that you have to rely on the data, so you want to make sure that the data is also reliable.
Right.
Sure.
It's rarely ever clean.
Exactly.
But as I think you said, Matt, as well, like this is something you see all over the place, and like just simple things like, what are your user personas? You asked the question earlier, like who are you going after? Like,
right.
In most companies, you can go and ask what are like our user personas, who are we going after, and why, and you can ask each different team in the organization. Different teams will have different answers for you, because typically these exercises either get done by marketing, and then product, maybe a few months down the line, someone in design says, hey, we need to do some user persona research, and nobody bothers to go and ask marketing, like, what do we know, what have we done? And the same thing might happen in exercise in sales or customer success. And teams really aren't effectively working together on these sorts of research projects because there isn't really any good method or process for them to do so, any good tools to be able to bring together the shared knowledge around what you know about your customers. So you talked about embeds as well. Like this is a great area where we see, for example, you're running up a document, so you're sending an email or you want to have reference to your user personas. You create an Avrio card for a user persona, and then you can link that and tag it everywhere. And then anytime you have new information or new insights or updates, you just update one card and it updates the references across all the different tools and everywhere you're working where you have access to it. So that way, like the team knows the information that you're acting on is the most relevant and up to date, and it's a way for you all to collaborate on it.
Cool. Before we move on to, switch gear toward the asking a bit about the organization and the products you're using, Matt, do you have any other questions about the product?
Well, maybe I do have one question about pricing. Maybe that's something we just highlight real quick. What kind of demos or pricing does Avrio have?
In place. Yeah. So we do have a free plan for you to get started, and we're actually busy just updating our plans now because we're rolling out a couple of new features. But essentially what the free plan allows you to do is be able to upload user interviews to Avrio. So you can upload up to 3 recordings per month that automatically get transcribed. And that also allows you to be able to create and capture information from wherever you are. You get access to the Chrome extension, Slack integration, and a few other things. So you can really get to experience the most part of Avrio from there. And then once you start to sort of like pick up usage, we have our starter plan starting at $8 per month per user. We do, though, have unlimited viewer accounts. So we really want to democratize information within a company. And if you can think sort of like the similar approach that Loom follows, where anybody can have access to Loom, anybody can create a limited amount. But once you start becoming an active member and an active contributor to Avrio, you'd have a license starting at $8 per user per month.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I'm going to sign up for that account.
Yeah,
awesome.
Sounds very reasonable. So tell us a bit about the company itself, because we know startups are usually a bit different than more established companies, with the resources you have, with the type of tools you're using and stuff like that. It's always interesting to hear about what type of products you might be using internally to help you with your product management.
Yeah, it's funny you should say sort of like startups have less resources and things like this. Absolutely. We're actually doing an exercise on Tuesday, I think it was, with my co-founder. We're doing the budgeting. We're looking at like the quarterly budget. And when we saw the amounts like we're spending on tools, we were like, for the amount of value that these tools deliver us, like we're paying almost nothing. But every time we'd think about it, bring on a new tool, we would scrutinize it and say like, okay, do we really need this? How is it going to add value? But ultimately, like it's by far the smallest line item on the budget that we have. So, but we do generally have like a good tool stack, I would say. because there are a lot of generous startup plans out there. So I don't know if you want to know any specifics, but
yeah, you mentioned you're using HotJar, but do you use other tools for product analytics or
absolutely
in-app messages or things like that?
Yeah. So like myself, I'm a huge fan of Segment. I previously used Segment at my startup that I had founded before HotJar. Mm-hmm. I introduced it at HotJar, and now I'm back to using it again at my own startup. So I've used, like, they've got a really good generous startup plan that essentially allows you to get started for free. And the reason I love Segment is because it gives me the freedom and flexibility to be able to switch tools anytime I like. And the switch almost goes to zero with the automated backups and the replay features that they offer once you upgrade to business. So we have Segment at the center of our analytics stack, collecting and cleaning data for us. Mm-hmm. We have one script and we store that information. We're able to send it everywhere. And then we have different data analytics tools. And actually, we set up quite a few different ones because for our use case as well, we really wanted to be able to test how Avrio works and interacts with all the different tools. So we have Amplitude set up. We have Mixpanel set up. I'd say like Mixpanel is probably the more day-to-day one we use out of the two, but we do have access to both. For messaging, we're using Intercom, which is one I'm a bit scared of because I know Intercom at some point gets extremely, extremely expensive, but we're on the startup plan for now.
Right.
But yeah, like I'd say that's the key pillars that we use on a day-to-day basis when it comes to metrics and analytics. And then from there as well, we, like I said, like send information to a lot of different other downstream tools that we use.
And of course you use in Avrio.
Yes, of course. I mean, that's what bring everything together.
Perfect. One last question, about the company that I always like to know is, how product-centered you are. And product-centered is not just like using your own product is one thing, but also, the vision and the strategy and the decisions that are made and all the different departments. Or I know in a startup, it's sometimes a department can be half a person or a person wearing several hats. But in general, making decisions based on the product versus making the decision based on sales or making decisions based on other things.
The way I view this as well for our company, and it's sort of the philosophy we want to build out as we grow the company, is that we are a product company and the product that we're building is the company. And I think a lot of times, like in organizations, like there's this really big focus on the product, and then that becomes like the engineering team, and we really just focus on the software. But ultimately, like our customers and clients are buying us as a product, and every touch point we have with them is just a different sort of part of that process and interaction. So the landing page and the website is like the wrapper that you get before you unbox your the piece of software or the gift that you're about to get. The customer service, everything really needs to sort of have the same consistency and same feel. So we like to think of ourselves sort of like our company as a product, and this way we sort of think, okay, like every touch point is important. Every touch point is critical. And how can we improve our product overall so the experience that our customers have with our product is really like consistent and great from end to end? So are we really centered on products as in what you're referring to now as in software? I would say like it's an early stage. So yes, definitely more predominantly, but I think each stage of the customer journey is equally as important. And it's important that we're able to deliver an end-to-end experience that excels. And I think like it's a bit cliche, but like a good example of this you could think of is like sort of the way Apple operates and runs. That everywhere you go with Apple, like the experience is the same and it's consistent and you feel it throughout. So whether you're on your iPhone, you're walking into a store in the US or South Africa, like you have the same experience no matter where you go, the same interactions with customers and with the staff and the team members and from the products that they deliver. So we try to bring that throughout the journey of Avrio.
I wanted to maybe chat a bit about also your other experiences. You have you're also a host of a podcast, churn.fm, right?
Yep.
And you're also very active in the startup community. I see on LinkedIn that you founded or a founding member of Startup Cyprus. So that's also very cool. What's the podcast about?
Yeah, I started the podcast like 3.5 years ago with the idea really that I wanted to build a business and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet. So I decided, let me build an audience So when the time was right, I could launch my product to that audience. And been fortunate to have some amazing guests on the show from some of the fastest growing companies in the world, specifically in SaaS. Like we've even had some surprise guests like the Mayor Suarez of Miami talking about retaining talent to the city. So podcast is really, really going in strength, and it paid back more than I ever expected. So with Avrio, we're actually very fortunate to raise an early pre-seed round, and 6 of our 8 investors actually came from guests of the show. So totally unexpected, but it sort of just keeps on paying dividends. And it was one of those things like I never wanted to do ads or advertising. And people always used to question like, what the hell are you doing? Like you've launched a new episode every Wednesday for the last like, how many weeks, and you're making zero money. Like you're just spending money on this. I got questions from my accountant, like, what are you doing? What should we expense this to? Is this like an asset? Is this an expense? And I was like, it's going to pay itself off one day. And like,
right.
Obviously, like I said, like now at this point, like what I've taken away from that experience is just unbelievable.
That's very cool to hear from other podcasters. So
yep.
I'm happy to hear that as well. Cool. So Avrio website is avrio.com, avrio.com. And it's a very detailed website that our listeners can go there and see. There is a demo that, like a quick demo over there, that like a video that
give you some idea of what the technical side of things.
Yeah, the one Matt already mentioned earlier. But you can also book a demo with Andrew. I see directly you can book it with you or with some other people in your organization. Yeah. And there is a lot of information over there about use cases and stuff like that. Very nicely done. And you can also sign up for the free trial or free account, so to try it out. And by the way, if you book a demo and you heard about Avrio through our podcast, just let Andrew know, because it will be great to see if there are any leads coming up from the podcast. So where else they can find you?
Yeah, that's obviously one good spot, and it'll be great to hear from anybody and listeners of the show today. Definitely love to show you the product and give you a little bit more details on what we've talked about today. But myself, I'm pretty active, most social. Like I use Twitter, LinkedIn. You can find me, Andrew Michael. My Twitter handle is Andrew Michael SA. I got late to the game and had to append my country initials at the end. But yeah, so I'm always like happy to hear from people, especially from different podcast episodes and things like that. I like to chat. Anyone have any feedback and things that I can improve on? I'd love to hear from you. And so please like feel free to connect either through our website directly or any one of the social channels.
Thanks so much, Andrew, for coming on. Avrio seems like a really cool product. I think a lot about shared understanding and sometimes the lack of shared understanding when it comes to certain things. And I think Avrio really could help solve some of those headaches that we as product managers and product teams have. So thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And lots of luck in the future. We want you to grow and we want to see you growing. So maybe, in the future, in a year or two, we will get one of your users to be a guest on the show and tell us how great it is from their perspective.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful to have. Awesome. Thanks to all listeners. And tk you, Andrew, Moshe. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.